Hey yo, welcome back to Slightly Mediocre.
And if you couldn't tell by the intro, today we're talking about Bond. I'm Wade.
Creed, and we're going to be talking about the entire series as a whole. We're going to talk about the different aspects of it, that's the way it started, the different actors that played it over the years. There's been a lot.
There's been a few.
And we're just going to go give our 2 cents. And like I said, we've said before in all our previous videos, this is our opinion. So
our opinion.
This is our giving our 2 cents, our thoughts on the franchise, what we liked, what we disliked.
I mean, maybe not our 2 cents, because I honestly don't have 2 cents to spare.
We're broke. Please sponsor us. But we're going to talk about the franchise, the future of the franchise, which I hear they're planning on doing a few things to change it up. And we're just, we'll start off from there. So, Wade, what do you like about the Bond franchise? Like, what was your first introduction to it? What film did you see that you really got you hooked into the whole franchise?
So the first Bond film, my family is a very big Bond family. We love the Bond franchise. The first Bond film I saw was actually the first one.
Dr. No.
Yeah, Dr. No. Dr. No. It was great. It was Sean Connery's first appearance as Bond. He did a really good job. There was a lot of cool little gadgets, cool cars, everything like that. And then that's kind of what drew me into the Bond thing. Ever since, as long as I can remember, being a secret agent was always something cool. Every little boy, every little girl kind of goes through that phase, of just being a secret agent and playing spy with their their parents, their brothers, their sisters.
That's something that's never gonna go out of style.
Yeah, no, and that's why those toys like spy gear and stuff is always super popular, because it's usually around 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, where that stuff kind of happens. And in all honesty, the gadgets still fascinate me. It's just like, what if that were real? It's like, how cool would that be?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are.
Yeah, and some of the car modifications and stuff like that. That's always something super cool. Like, even in my car right now, I would love to have an eject button. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
That would be cool.
But yeah, Dr. No was the first, and I've seen every single one since, because as said in some other videos, that my family, they do a Bond marathon. They do a 25 days of Bond starting December 1st. Woo! And they go, if they watch one movie a day, it lands right on Christmas Day.
You also try it out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. Now, if you watch multiple movies a day, just back to back to back to back, you can probably get through the entire series in a couple days.
Yeah.
But
where's the fun in that?
Yeah, what's the fun in that?
Spread them out, spread the love.
It's like the advent calendar of Bonds.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's super rad. But what was your first introduction to Bond?
So like you, I saw Dr. No, and I just fell in love with the gadgets. I've always been like a gadget guy. So whenever I see the gadgets, I always think, that's the coolest thing. I just love to see how the progression of the Bond character, throughout the series, it's gotten darker, a lot darker from when it was.
Oh, definitely.
Where it started out, the new Daniel Craig films have a lot, more deeper, meanings to them. There's more in-depth look in how Bond's, James's mind is, how he works, what he's thinking, what affects him.
It's kind of like his mental state.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and that's what kind of gives it a newer edge. And I've always been a fan. There's some films where I have missed. I get to see the entirety of them. I've seen the majority of them. And I've always been a big fan. And for the future of the series, we've talked about this in our marathon movie episode. If you all have not seen that, please watch it.
Yes.
We'll put a link down in the description below.
Yeah.
So this film, these series of films, they've always, captivated the attention of the audience. And to do that, you need to have a good actor playing James Bond.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched into this, but there's talks of having Henry Cavill play James Bond. He's a Brit, and it'll be pretty cool to see him play it. Daniel Craig's done a great job, but he's getting up in years, and I'm not sure they're doing as much acting as he has, been doing in the past. There's also talks of Idris Elba Great actor. I've seen him in many films.
Idris Elba. Who's
He's the guy that played Heimdall in the Thor films, as well as some other films that don't come to mind. There's like I think the Dark Tower. He was the gunman in that movie.
Oh, okay.
So he's a great actor, great actor, and he was in Pacific Rim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was Stacker Pentecost. No, so that'll be pretty cool to see the different twists on the James Bond franchise. The franchise as a whole is a gem. I think it's it all stems from a little backstory on it. It started from Ian Fleming. He was a naval intelligence officer with the British, and he kind of not really. I guess he did. He kind of based it off his life. So he would the whole spy character was based on like his experience in the spy community, the early days of like espionage and all that, and just grew from there. With Q, the quartermaster. And like what we said, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these gadgets really, existed. Like, for example, GPS. The military had that prior to what, the public has now, and then they released it to the public. I'm sure, 20 years from now, we'll be having stuff like, oh, hey, was that in a Bond film? Yeah, it was. So I'm sure, even nowadays, in 2018, you can see some gadget. I'm sure there's no, ejection seats or whatever, but there'll be different gadgets, sprouting up here that look a lot like the Bond stuff. So people have drawn a lot of stuff from the Bond series, Bond franchise. So Wade, what is your should I phrase that? Who is your favorite Bond character? Like who's your favorite actor that played Bond?
If I had to rank them,
okay,
and I feel like we have to rank them because they all bring like their own flavor to it.
Yeah, their own flair.
And the thing about it is, you got to think about the era that they played Bond in.
Okay.
Of course, Sean Connery is number one always because
the ultimate man.
Yeah, like he played Bond in the time and era that Bond would have really been prevalent.
Oh yeah.
Kind of that Cold War-ish, kind of going.
Post-World War II spy era.
Yeah, like, where spies were huge, right?
Oh, yeah, like against the Russians.
Yeah, Sean Connery is always number one on my mind. I'd honestly have to say number two would be Daniel Craig, because Daniel Craig, I mean, as you said, in his Bond movies, it's kind of before Bond became Bond.
Yeah.
Like because in the last movie, that's where M is really prevalent and everything like that. That's where M gets his office. If you haven't seen it yet, sorry for the spoilers. But and you're really looking at the psyche of Bond. And then Pierce Brosnan, I really only liked his Bond movies because of the gadgets. That was in the late '80s, early '90s, early 2000s. Or all through the 90s and early 2000s, because, that's when everyone was obsessed with gadgets.
Oh, yeah.
And, some of the gadgets that Pierce Brosnan had as Bond were the best ones ever. And then, of course, there's George Lazenby and Roger Moore, which are the only two Bonds left. And I feel like George Lazenby and Roger Moore are kind of neck and neck with the last place. George Lazenby, he only did one Bond movie, and that was, I think, 1969, something like that. 1969. He was the youngest person to play Bond. The only downside about the whole thing is that he was actually Australian. He wasn't a true Brit.
What about Timothy Dalton?
Timothy Dalton. He was another Bond that was, I feel like Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, George Lazenby, they all kind of just fall in with one another. They're Bonds, but they're not Bonds.
Yeah. When you think of James Bond, you think
Sean Connery, Daniel Craig, and Pierce Brosnan. Those are the big three that you think of. Of course, as Pierce Brosnan started getting older and, everything like that, they had to kind of phase him out into Daniel Craig. Now, future Bonds would be very interesting to see if they're going to go, if they're going to go Henry Cavill, if they're going to go the dude who played Bane. I know there's been some talks about him. I forget his name for the life of me.
Tom Hardy,
yeah. There's been some talks about Tom Hardy possibly being a Bond. I feel like he would make a good Bond, but the only thing is we don't know what his face looks like because in every movie that he's in, his face is covered.
Well, we didn't see his face in the Mad Max film.
A little bit, but he was in full makeup. Like you don't really know what his face looks like. And Dunkirk, like he showed his face a little bit, but for most of the movie, it was covered by a flight mask.
Yeah. Well. Also,
not saying anything against Tom Hardy, of course. We're just throwing out some.
So with Henry Cavill, like the thing that's interesting about him was that he was in a film that I think was released 2015, was called A Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yes.
So that film was also like a spy espionage film, and he did really well in that.
Yeah, and the thing about Man from U.N.C.L.E. though is it's based off an old school TV show, and you know. But that character is totally different from Bond.
Yes.
It's not a Bond character. It's more of a kind of fly by the seat of your pants Cold War spy.
Yeah.
And I feel like with Bond, the way that Daniel Craig kind of set the Bond franchise back on its way was, the fact that Cold War spy, flyboy, by the seat of your pants type of thing doesn't really work. So I feel like Henry Cavill would be an interesting choice for Bond. I'm not sure how he will play as a Bond, though. But overall, I mean, the Bond series is like, you see a little bit of differentiation between who's playing Bond at the time. But even if you watch the Bonds, like from start to finish of, chronologically, you see so much history. Like even in the background, not even like up front, like, prominent, anything like that. Just in the background, you see how the cars change, you see how the people change. You see how all this stuff changes. You see, certain political climates change. Because like in the first movies, they don't even want to talk about the USSR. And then, in the '90s movies and early 2000s movies, they're sitting there just like, pretending to bomb the Russians. And it's just like it's just how the political climate was and how that portrayed itself in Hollywood. It was really really interesting to see. And then, of course, you see the gadget development and everything like that, which is something that we're both fans of because, gadgets, who doesn't want gadgets? Gadgets are awesome. I'm a fan of the cars. I mean, I'm like...
I've always loved those different cars.
I love seeing the cars. And then even in the new movies, like seeing them bring back the old DB5 and everything like that, the old Aston Martins. That's awesome to me. And then, it's just seeing a lot of these things. And then, of course, as dudes... We like the Bond girls.
Oh yes.
And you kind of see how that develops. For our younger audience, the Bond girls sometimes are a little bit racy.
The names, definitely are.
Yeah.
One comes to mind.
Yeah.
That one.
Our older audience understands what we're talking about, but it's really interesting. And then, you also see the development of just like pop culture, you see the development of music and, Paul McCartney did the soundtrack for one. And then, like later on, Adele did a soundtrack for one.
Yeah, she won numerous awards.
Yeah. And the thing is there's a lot of history around Bond itself and about making the movies. And, some of the stunts that were performed were the first time they were ever performed. And then now you see him in, Fast and Furious and Need for Speed and all these other movies and franchises and everything. But they all started with Bond. And it's amazing to see that and how, 50 plus years of Bond have progressed. So
to branch off of that, how Bond's affected the industry, there's also been, spin-offs. And, one comes to mind is the Austin Powers series. It's more of a comedy than, it is. But, we'll talk more about that series when we talk about the Mike Myers episode. Stick around for that one.
Season 2.
But this is, I've always loved the Austin Powers films. And they just they take the Bond films and they got all the gadgets and all that stuff, but they make it, really a comedy, put a comedy twist to it. And it's just great. It's
just a parody of the Bond films. And, it's great to see how much Bond has affected the world as we know it. And, like he was saying earlier, with the gadgets and everything, like, it wouldn't surprise us with technology that we have today if some of those gadgets were actually real. And if you look at some of the documentaries and stuff, some of those gadgets are actually real. And it's super, super cool to see.
If you want to look up something that's pretty cool, look up, the gadgets that they use in the Cold War. Like, they had all this neat stuff, like the CIA, the KGB, MI6. They had all these different gadgets and tools that they used to try to assassinate people, protect people, listen in on whatever. And it was just all this neat stuff that you think that that can't be real, but it is.
Yeah,
so that's the cool stuff. So,
and if you want to get further into conspiracy theories and everything, you can go look at like the blue books and everything like that were released by the FBI a couple of years ago. I believe it was 2015. 15. Where like a lot of stuff got declassified, and you can see all of that, in some of these gadgets and everything like that. Granted, a lot of it's classified still, but it's really interesting to see how, maybe one of their scientists watched one of those Bond films and was like, I have the technology to make that. Why don't I? Just for the hell of it.
So let us know in the comments below what you think. If you think these gadgets really exist, if you have heard of any stuff that we missed, let us know what you think about who could play Bond, the next James Bond, because we're talking about how Daniel Craig is stepping back from the role.
Yeah.
So let us know who would you like to see to play the Bond character. What you want to, what us talk about next in the next, episode, and what movie you saw first, or who your favorite, James Bond character was. We gave our 2 cents. Let us know what you think.
Also, another great thing to comment or email us in the description below would be, let us know how you think Bond has affected the world as we know it. Like, how it's affected pop culture, how it's affected the world in general. Like, how do you think how it's changed things? But, please subscribe, let us know, and hashtag Cretanites,
bringing it back
to make sure that we get a fountain brew. Fountain brew.
Y'all know what that is.
Yeah, I mean, y'all know what it is, but I have to cover it because we're not paid to say it. Make sure, hashtag Cretanites all over Twitter, everything like that, to make sure that we get our sponsorship.
Please.
Yes.
So once again, thank you. We are Sunny Mediocre. Thank you for tuning in.
Stick with us for season 2. Bye.